And joining me now is Jerry Wasserman, the Democratic candidate for the 13th Norfolk District State Representative seat. Jerry, welcome to It's All Local.
Thank you.
Jerry, tell me a little bit about your family life. Growing up, did you grow up here in Needham?
No, actually, I grew up in Mansfield, which is now a busy area of the state, but it was a sleepy little community back then. Yeah. And there was no football stadium next door in Foxborough. There was no industrial park down there, or even 495 wasn't there at that time. And I moved here after living in New York for a little while, living in Philadelphia for a little while, in Providence, and finally got back. I started my career, well, after getting a bachelor's from UMass, and then an MBA from Columbia University. I started as a healthcare administrator, so I have some knowledge in that area as well.
Which is an important issue, of course, with healthcare.
Yes, yes. And after that, I've worked as a management consultant and taught college. I taught at University of Mass Boston, at Suffolk, and at Berklee College of Music for about 11 years as an associate professor. A
lot of people here in Needham know who you are, but tell me why you're running for state representative.
Well, for the last 20 years, I've been doing work at the town level. 9 years on the school committee, and the last 11 on the Board of Selectmen. And it's given me a great deal of knowledge about the issues of the state level. I've also headed up several state organizations, the Selectmen's Association, the Suburban Coalition. I'm on the Governor's Local Government Advisory Committee. And with that knowledge, I've been able to work with the legislature for years, and I'd like to work from the inside to tell them what we need at a local level and what we don't need, and help them to make the right decisions.
What are you hearing in the other communities when you go out and you're campaigning and talking to people? What are they most concerned about?
Well, obviously, a lot of the issues that I've dealt with in the statewide organizations, Suburban Coalition especially, apply equally. So the areas of local aid and being able to create the best education system. Senior tax relief is an issue there. Medfield has a major issue going on right now about the use of the land of the former state hospital that people have some very strong concerns about. My ability to listen to people and to respond, I think, would be a help to them in taking their concerns to the state and making sure the state doesn't impose something on Medfield.
What would you like to see happen there?
I think the housing development that they're talking about will probably happen there. The question is making it as compatible as we can for the rest of the community, and making the site environmentally sound, and making sure that there aren't other expenses that the community has to incur because the state is doing that the state takes their burden of it.
What are some of the things that we do need here?
Well, obviously we need better aid for education. Massachusetts is one of the states that overall pays a good amount for education, but we're below average on what the state pays, which puts most of the burden on the property tax. We need to take some of that off. We need the state to pay a fair share. We need less red tape, more ability to operate freely. And we need support for issues like environmental change.
What are some of the environmental changes you'd like to see made?
I'd like to see alternative energies made more available and easier to work with in Massachusetts. And that also helps us in another way, because if we encourage the environmental industry in Massachusetts to serve us, we also build jobs in Massachusetts that way, and it's a very solid new growth industry that we ought to be working more with.
That's a big issue right now, is the unemployment rate.
Yes.
As a state representative working with the legislature and the governor's office, how would you promote job growth here? How would you promote companies staying here, growing here, and putting people back to work?
Well, there's several ways. The one is what I talked about. I think we can do much more to encourage the environmental industry, also the biotech industry. Secondly, all the studies show that jobs, the major growth in jobs comes from small business. And the state needs to do a lot more to help small business, not just incentives, but in removing red tape from them so that they can grow easier. That's where the jobs are. Thirdly, while statewide candidates always talk about that they're going to recruit jobs to the state, the evidence is that it's the local communities that businesses come to. And what do they want? They want good services and they want lower property taxes. So by tackling the other issues I've talked about putting more aid from the state and less on the property tax and removing the red tape, you help communities like Needham to recruit business in.
Some people say it's very challenging to open a business up in the Commonwealth because of how costly it is, the taxes and whatnot.
Yes.
What would you do specifically to change that?
Well, I think I kind of covered that. We need to offer some incentives, but we also need to make it easier for businesses to open and to thrive. Less red tape, less requirements that are unnecessary. We need to review it. Some requirements are very necessary, but let's look at it and see how we can make it easier, how we can assist them, and make Massachusetts a place where small business can really grow.
You have two Democratic opponents.
Yes.
What makes you stand out against the other two?
I am the only candidate with the kind of knowledge that comes from 20 years of doing this kind of work. The others have a short amount, but one has a short amount, the other has almost none. And that experience and the accomplishments that I've already shown, I'm the only one with demonstrated accomplishments over the last 20 years. The funding floor that this community gets from the state is something that I worked for when no one was working for. As chairman of the Suburban Coalition, legislators were rolling their eyes when I raised that issue at the beginning, and now we have a funding floor, a minimum, that every community, a community like Needham, will get from the state on education funding. I've worked on issues at the local level, senior tax relief. We have two funds for senior tax relief for seniors on fixed income who meet financial qualifications in Needham that are almost nowhere else in the state, and I led the charge for those. So I can demonstrate that I've done the work. We just got through town meeting, and I presented at town meeting a zoning change so that we can put up a tower to measure for the turbine, to put a wind turbine up. I led the charge for that. So there are many things that I have a record that goes back for a long time of working for this town, and that I think is the difference.
Do you worry that people nowadays seem to be sort of fed up with the established politicians, and so they might look at somebody like you who has a lot of experience, which is a good thing, but then say, well, we want change, we need change, let's bring change, and that might negatively affect you?
No, for two reasons. One is this is a very local race. It's Needham, Dover, and Medfield, and people go by what you've done. And secondly, I'm going to a new environment. I'm not an established state legislator. What I've done is school committee and selectmen, and worked lobbying or convincing the state to do things that we need locally. But I'm not an established politician at the state level.
Why should people vote for you on September 14th?
Because I know how to listen to them, because I can look at a piece of legislation and understand its impact on this local community, and because I will work, as I have for many years, very hard for the people of this community.
All right, Jerry, I want to thank you for being here today, and we wish you the best of luck in September.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back with Denise Garlick.